Thank you, Senator Krueger. Thank you, Commissioner, for your testimony today, and I appreciate the few moments we had prior to the hearing to chat. As I stated to you, in reading through Part F, the growth targets, I have a number of questions. I'm very concerned that as a state, we have spent years investing in plans to help preserve and protect our natural resources, to do things like to preserve and protect open spaces, viable farmlands, etc. And I see potential unintended consequences in Part F with the housing compact and also with the ADU language. So I look forward to talking to you and your staff in more detail about where I have questions and where I see some of those challenges. But I wanted to start out by going back to, you kind of concluded your presentation by saying that New York State cannot afford to continue with the status quo. I couldn't agree more. We lost, based on one report I read, 500,000 people over the past 2 years. But I would argue, and I think many others would agree, that the primary reason we're losing people to so many states is our high property taxes. It's not for solely a lack of housing. And I'm concerned about some of the policy that's built into this budget that actually has the potential, I believe, to increase property taxes, not reduce it, at a time when people can't afford it. They can't afford it anymore. I wanted to talk about one of the important strategies for helping more people to achieve the American dream of home ownership and helping us to retain the unique character of our communities that we work so hard to do. That's what attracts economic development, tourists to our communities, etc. And that's to support local efforts to preserve existing housing stock and redevelop vacant, abandoned, and underutilized properties. In your opening presentation, you mentioned success working with the land bank in the city of Kingston. I'm very familiar with Wayne County, their regional land bank. They've done a phenomenal job redeveloping distressed properties into quality housing and creating job opportunities for local people. So I'm going to assume, and I know that can get me in trouble, but that HCR supports the land bank model just based on you using the city of Kingston and the land bank work there as a positive. Can you tell me how much funding is allocated in the 2024 proposed budget for land banks?
So last year we received $50 million in the budget for land banks, and we released we worked really closely with all the land banks and the association to craft what they really wanted to see from that. We put out the first round of funding in coordination with them, which was really for operational support, which is what they felt was the first need. And then we're just about to release the next tranche of that money, again, based on consultation with them with what they...
So how much is in 2024?
Well, we still have the money from last year that we're spending down. So I believe of the 50, we've only committed about 20. So we're going to, and again, this is in consultation with the land banks themselves. So we're about to release the next tranche, of which will probably be 20 or the full 30 this year will go out.
And I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but my time is so limited. So we've allocated zero in the 2024 budget for land banks.
Because we still have $30 million left, right, from last year.
And we should be moving that out since these programs are very successful and help us meet our housing goals. I wanted to talk about, too, I mentioned that I think there are some policies that could actually potentially increase property taxes. Things like property tax exemptions for developers, some as long as 25 years. In my work, I'm familiar with pilots that go as long as 10 years, 15 years, maybe some as long as 25 years. There's also language in the executive proposal to create a private cause of action, which I think could lead to more costs for local governments and ultimately higher property taxes. So I guess my question to you is, who was consulted on this proposal? Have you had input from the Association of Counties, Towns, Conference of Mayors, school associations, all these folks who are going to be impacted by this policy?
Yes, we certainly have done a lot of stakeholder outreach. We've met with organizations like the Conference of Mayors and others. I would say a couple of things. One is the intent of the plan is certainly not to raise people's property taxes. The intent is to create more housing, and we see that actual housing cost is sort of the number one stressor above property taxes statewide and why people sort of choose to relocate. And so we are really focused on making sure that the increase in housing supply goes to drive down housing costs, which again, we see as one of the number one stressors for people.
I have so many more questions and I only have about 10 seconds left. I'm going to make a comment. Earlier there was a comment made about large lot sizes, and how that limits housing in our rural communities. Those large lot sizes are important to accommodate the keeping of farm animals, to preserve the rural character of our communities. And also, we don't want housing tracts built next to farms. It just doesn't work.